am in Champagne in the middle of these gorgeous vineyards, and you might ask, what does that have to do with resin? Well, let me show you. I am all for an art project that begins with opening a bottle of champagne. So without further ado, let's do it. Unfortunately for you, unfortunately for me, I do not know any of the fancy tricks of opening a champagne bottle, such as the stem of a glass or a sword or whatnot. So I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way. Here goes. Is that the most satisfying sound or what? Okay, firstly, a disclaimer. Moat and Chandon have not sponsored this video, but if you're watching, hi, what's up? So first things to this project after drinking the champagne is to actually smash the bottle of champagne. And believe it or not, this was probably the most challenging part of this project. How to smash a champagne bottle, and it did take a couple of attempts, but we did get there in the end, and now it's just a case of picking up the shards. And even though I was double gloved and super careful, I did manage to cut myself during this process, but I won't show you the bloody mess just because YouTube does not like content like that and can quite easily demonetize this video, and we don't want that. So don't do as I do as I say, and be super careful if you are going to be repeating this, because double gloving was not enough. Glass shards collected, it is time to move on to the actual painting. So I have this antique gold frame, which was an old frame that I had from a picture that I had in my staircase, and years ago when I moved in, I did change that painting because for some reason it gave me the creeps, but the frame was lovely and solid, so I did save it, and it is coming in nice and handy for this project. So the first thing I need to do is actually unassemble the frame and prime up the backing wood portion of it. So I did a couple of coats of gesso. We are now going to put the backing back into the frame and close the frame shut, and then we're gonna silicone all over the edge of the frame to seal it, because we are going to be putting resin on the front side of this frame, and we do not want the resin leaking through the frame. I hope it makes sense. Hopefully it'll make sense once you see the rest of the steps. So this is what it looks like. Now I am once again going to go and seal the front edge as well of this frame, just because resin likes to be cheeky and get into all sorts of nooks and crannies. So we're going to be safe and not sorry, and we're going to seal the front edge as well. And I'm trying to be a little bit neater with the front edge.
One eternity later.
So this is what it looks like. It has dried over a day, and we are ready for the resin. So now you see me pouring up and mixing some epoxy resin, and I'm going to tint it white. And let me tell you, at this point I do not know what I'm doing, because we are far from resin at this point. There are way too many steps before I need the resin, and I do not know what I was thinking mixing up all of that resin and tinting it white. It is all the champagne from earlier, I'm telling you. It's messed with my brain and I'm not thinking straight. But do not worry, I do have a lot of spare molds around, so I'm gonna try my best not to waste that resin, and we can move on with a clearer head with this project. Okay, so what I want to do at this point is create a nice background for the painting. I want it to be marbly and muted, not the focal point of the painting, but I do want it to be a lovely, pleasant background. Because this is such a large piece, I don't want it to look all white and plain. So what I'm doing now is putting on some foil adhesive, and this is by Artsy Will from Artistic Painting Studios. Again, I will link all of this in the description with my discount code, but it's basically an adhesive that I'm brushing on, and we will be doing a marble effect foil on this to create our background. The cool thing about this adhesive is that it takes roughly about an hour and a half to completely dry, depending on how thick or thin or your coat was. But then once it reaches that tacky stage, you can come back and do the foiling like whenever. Like I literally mean whenever, like even after a day, 2 days, a week, a month. and it is still going to remain tacky until you've put the foil on. So love that. Okay, so we're ready for the foil. I'm using this foil called Jade Onyx, something like that. I will link it below. But basically it is these gorgeous earthy greeny colors, and it's just all of that marbly goodness that will make the background of this painting. I feel like the earthy colors go really well with the frame, the antique gold frame. And yeah, so now because this foil isn't wide enough for the entire painting, we are going to have to do this in sections. And if you did have OCD, you might want to like line up the sections for it to match perfectly. But fortunately, I do not suffer from OCD like that. And because this is my background, there's going to be a lot on top. I am not 100% fussed about where the edges line up. Now, this video is not about using these foils and is not a tutorial about using these foils, but if you do want a detailed video about these, head over to Artistic Painting Studio. They have a lot of tutorials on how exactly to apply these foils, and they have a ton of these in various colors and patterns. Okay, so absolutely love what that is looking like. Now what I'm going to do next is mix up a thin layer of resin and pour over this foil just to seal all of that in. And it's just clear resin that I'm using at this point. So once I have put down a thin layer of resin, we are now ready to put down our bottle, which isn't a bottle anymore, just shards of glass. I suppose that was once a bottle. But yeah, I am laying this down in a way that it looks like the bottle literally smashed on the painting. So I'm just trying to sort of visualize where the pieces would land up if that happened, or essentially where they look aesthetically okay. And the resin will actually then obviously act as glue and hold these down in place. This would be a good moment to remind you to like, comment, sub, ring that notification bell if you like such content and if you want me to keep making such videos for you. Leave me your thoughts on this one. I reply to all of my comments and love to hear from you. So we're going to leave this to cure and be back the next day for the next step.
The next day.
Okay, so it's the next day and this bottle is all stuck and the resin is now cured. Now, what I want to do before I do the next step is mattify all of this marble background. Okay, hear me out. Okay, you might wonder, why am I doing this? Now, I essentially want there to be resin spilled from the broken bottle on this painting, which is obviously, as you know, resin is glossy, so that's going to be glossy liquid. But I also have resin on the background, which is glossy, so I want to essentially mattify that and make it look like marble, so that when I come on and put my actual resin champagne spill, that stands out and that is not lost against gloss. And you know, it really stands out against the matte background. I hope I'm making sense, because it's really hard to explain this and words are hard. But if you do have any questions about this process, leave me a comment. I will be happy to answer, hopefully better. So I'm just using this varnish, which is a mattifying varnish that I got off of Amazon, and I'm using this brush, which is a very silly brush to be using for this process, but it's the only one I could find, because I swear brushes have legs, I'm telling you guys. But anyway, so brushing this on, obviously I'm not brushing it on to the actual bottle, but entirely everywhere else. And we are going to leave this to dry. Okay, so this is a close-up to show you where it's dry, and you can see that is quite matte, which is the effect that I was going for. And you can see some areas which are still not quite dry yet, so those still look glossy, but loving how this is turning out. Okay, now we're ready for possibly my most favorite step of this video. So we are going to create the champagne drip spillage thingy. And what I've done is mixed up some resin. I've used the 4-hour demold resin because I do want it to be a thicker resin, because I'd like it to kind of be where I put it and not spread out too much. And what I've done is mixed in some gold dust into this, and this is by Stone Coat Countertops. And I absolutely love this because this is a glittery thing. Unlike the other glitters that kind of sink to the bottom, this stuff floats on top and looks pretty cool. And to me, in my head, it looks like the champagne bubbles, and it gives that lovely bubbly effect. Yeah, so I did use gold dust, and I'm just putting in the tiniest amount just for the hint of gold. And I know you can't see it yet, but you will see when I show you the finished piece what I'm talking about. And I'm just, once again, pouring this over onto the areas where I think the bottle smashed and the champagne leaked. And can I just tell you, this was so oddly satisfying to do. I'm just using my popsicle stick to make sure it gets into all the bits that I want it to go. And then actually I'm not gonna pop the bubbles because, you know, I don't mind bubbles in champagne liquid. So if there are bubbles, I actually quite welcome them in this case. So yeah. And I did decide to add like drops, like just literally water drops, because not everywhere there's going to be like proper flowing liquid. Some places there's just going to be like little drops of champagne, if you will. So further out, I've just dripped on some of the resin. And then I had some finishing to do around the frame, which I did. I did put my signature logo on the frame, and finally, this is how this turned out. I hope you like it. I absolutely love how this turned out. Love the background, love the champagne. Do let me know what you think of this one, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye.